So, good morning, everybody. My name's Sean Gibb. I'm the Events and Marketing Manager here at Pro Manchester. And I'm delighted to welcome you today to a knowledge exchange with the sports sector. It's hosted by Christopher Peacock, Head of Manchester for Grayling Communications. And I will let the panel that is made up of Lancashire Cricket Club and Manchester Football Association and the Rugby League World Cup introduce themselves shortly. Following today's session, I will send out a post-event email, which will include any links and signposts to some of our other upcoming events. It'll also include our feedback form. So it would be really appreciated if you could take just 2 minutes just to fill that in. It really does help us, especially want to know your ideas and your thought, what content you want for future events, what you'd like to see. So yeah, if you could fill that in, it'd be really appreciated. And then the only other thing to mention is just a couple of points of housekeeping. If you could please keep your microphones on mute for the time being. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. And if you have any questions or you comments, want to make any observations at all, please use the chat function. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Chris Peacock.
Thank you very much, Sean, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We've been running these knowledge exchanges throughout the pandemic, and they've been absolutely fascinating events. I hope you've seen some of them. If you've not, I'm sure they're available to watch back on Pro Manchester's YouTube channel. But today's we're focusing on a subject that I know that I've been keen for us to look at for a while. So I'm really delighted we're looking at it. We're looking at sports. And we've got 4 great panelists to join us today from the world of football, cricket and rugby league. Not being too biased, but the 3 best sports that there are, unless you're particularly a fan of tiddlywinks, but we'll look at that for another day. And today we want to look at really how, in terms of what's been going on in the past 18 months or so, particularly how the pandemic's affected everybody. But we also want to look at the future, and we want to be positive. We always try and keep these knowledge exchanges of a very positive outlook, but obviously there's the very big pandemic that we've all been living through and still living through at the moment that we can't avoid, and it has impacted us all. So without further ado, we've got Angela Hodgson from Emirates Old Trafford and Lancashire Cricket. We've got Colin Bridgeford, the Manchester FA CEO, and we've also got Claire Fitzsimmons and Tracy Power from the Rugby League World Cup. So we've got a great panel today. As Sean mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions via the chat. I'll do my best to ask the panel when we get an opportunity to. If there's something that someone says you want to talk about or mention, please just throw it in there and we'll do what we can. So we're going to start off with having a little bit look back of how things have been going over the past 15 months or so in terms of how things have been impacted. And I'm going to go to Angela first, if I can, please. Angela, so how has the past 15 months affected Emirates Old Trafford and Lancashire Cricket?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So hi, everyone. Nice to, I can't see you all, but hi. Yeah, for us, I think particularly reflecting on everything, and back in 2019, it was just a mega year for the club. We had Cricket World Cup where we hosted the India-Pakistan game and 5 others as well. So India played 3 times actually with us against the West Indies, and then in the semi-final as well. So people were coming from all over the world to the venue, and it was over 1 billion people, I think, watching the India-Pakistan game as well. And I just think back to that year. We had the Ashes as well, and then almost £9 million worth of revenue just from the hotel and conference and events alone. So it was just such a jam-packed year, and all of us at the club just absolutely loved it, thrived on that year, and it was exhausting, but it was just, you know, amazing in equal measures, having all of those people coming together and just enjoying live sport and events. And, you know, we were all incredibly proud of what we achieved that year. And then suddenly, you know, we got into 2020 March and the world completely changed. So I think going from that year to suddenly, you know, working within a pandemic, and literally the phones just completely stopped, and all of the business ultimately that we had on the books for that next few months just completely rolled to the back end of the year. And it was horrendous. You know, it was just, you know, what's going to happen? When is this going to end? Is the business going to come back at the back end of the year? Nobody really knew. And I think, you know, from a cricket perspective, you know, we didn't know when the season was going to start. You know, we had a lot of people that had bought tickets, and, you know, we just didn't know whether cricket was going to come back. I think luckily for us, we were selected as a venue by the ECB to be one of 2 venues, 2 cricket clubs to deliver behind closed doors cricket. So throughout the summer of last year, we delivered 21 games of international cricket, which was amazing. All behind closed doors, obviously, no fans, which was very weird, very eerie. You know, I think quite challenging for the staff to work in that kind of environment, because we're used to the adrenaline of people coming in and working in that kind of space. And so I think it was very difficult, and obviously all the different protocols that we had to put in place to work in a COVID safe environment. It was a biosecure bubble that people were working in, limited number of people on site, minimum number of staff on site, testing obviously on a weekly basis. But you know what, it was great in a sense that we were able to support the ECB and bring cricket to life during the summer, which was fantastic. And we also hosted a number of elite teams in the hotel as well, which was great. So yeah, I think all in all for us, we were able in some sense to keep the venue alive. Post behind closed doors cricket, we delivered a campaign called Safe in One Place, which basically amplified the venue and the experience and the expertise that we basically developed over that year, to try and focus on bringing the venue side of the business back from a conference and events point of view. And that campaign was very greatly received in the industry. I think it showed our fighting spirit in terms of, you know, we wanted to support the events industry and trying to kind of say we're an organised, methodical kind of industry that, you know, is born out of organisation. We can do this. You know, unfortunately, I suppose the events industry has taken, you know, a massive hit, and we've been delivering smaller events. So it's been tough, you know, smaller events for 30. The hotel's been ticking along at points. I think since the roadmap was announced at the beginning of this year, we've seen some optimism for sure. You know, inquiry-wise, since the roadmap was initially announced, we've seen about 150 inquiries come through, worth about 1.6 million. So it shows that that confidence is returning again. Things are looking up. I think, you know, it's still going to be a bit of a rocky ride, but we're seeing that the business is there for the back end of the year. From a ticketing point of view, we're sold out for our international IT20 and the test match this year, and for Yorkshire. So we've got a big packed summer of events, from a domestic cricket point of view, the T20, the 100 ball competition that's coming along, international cricket, and we are starting to see events coming through now, as I said, particularly the back end of the year. So things are progressing in the right direction. Obviously, time will tell what happens next, but you know, we're positive about the future for sure. I think things will come back with a bang.
That's great, thanks, Angela. And just thinking about events, I'm gonna jump to Tracy and Claire now. If I come to you first, Claire, in regards to Rugby League World Cup, because obviously we're talking about a major international event now in terms of how it's been, how it was affecting certainly the planning and the organisation around the pandemic. And in terms of you, Claire, obviously I know your role particularly is obviously on sale focused and so on. How has the past 15 months really affected you and the World Cup and the planning and organisation around that side of things?
Thanks, Chris, and welcome everybody to the session. It's great to be part of it and talk about how sport has been affected and what we're doing to kind of get over and look forward to the next stage of the roadmap. But how it's affected us, Chris, mainly is obviously the tournament and the whole programme is 3 tournaments in one, and we are delivering that across 21 venues. So you can imagine the planning that goes in to deliver these tournaments across 21 venues and 61 games. So the planning was well underway. We were liaising with all the venues because there's a lot of logistics involved in putting together your packages and your products, and making sure that we can deliver that at each venue, which all venues are very different capacities, different facilities, different staff and resources. So we were well underway of planning, ready to launch so at the end of August into our hospitality programme and premium seat programme, and obviously into lockdown in March. So how that's affected us in terms of being able to deliver the timings of going on sale was everything locked down, all the venues closed, all the staff were put on furlough. So our planning became a lot, it didn't go to standstill because we had done enough preparation prior to the March timing. However, there was still a lot of box ticking to be done and working with the venues to make sure we were in a good place that we could actually start to engage with people and sell the products and make sure that we were ready and in a good place to be able to get out to market. So, you know, I think the lockdown was the most difficult time, and we then had to think about new ways of communicating. So everybody became so familiar with Teams. We'd never used it before, and now I think that's the only way we talk to each other is during a Teams call or a Zoom call. But you know, it came with its challenges, people working from home and networks. You know, so we kind of made the best of it. But one thing that really struck me, and I don't know if anybody else experienced this, but very early on in the stages of the pandemic, it was a very different kind of place where we were in the sort of second or third lockdown. I think people actually enjoyed the first one, if I can say that. And actually the weather was good. We'd never experienced it before. People were enjoying time with family. It was a different conversation, the first lockdown, and a more positive experience. But as we get into the pandemic, I think that changed, and I think we then had to become a little bit more aware that, you know, this wasn't going to go away, and people's mental well-being was important. And so we again then had to adapt our approach and how we were talking to venues and not be so hung up about, oh, we need this piece of information or we can't do this. So we again just had to adapt through that you know, process. And you know, I think we've learned so much about each other. I think people had a voice because they had to have a voice. They weren't in their office environment, they were at home, they maybe didn't have the support network of their colleagues, you know, and I think that really challenged people, but people started to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Claire. I was going to say actually about the weather completely. My Facebook timeline reminding me of how glorious it was this time last year, being able to work in the garden and thinking this lockdown ain't too bad, is it? Really? But we certainly can't do that this week. I don't know. I know we had a quick brief chat before we started, and the different weather forecasts across Greater Manchester today are very varied. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't want to be organising this outside today. Yeah. But thanks for that, Claire. I'm going to jump to Colin now. I'll come back to you, Tracy, in a second. Because Colin, in terms of football, I suppose with it being the national sport, it gets the biggest headlines around what's happening around the pandemic and so on, particularly at a professional level. But from a Manchester FA level as well, I mean, the impact it must have had on grassroots football as well, that must have been really substantial.
Yeah, morning, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity. Great to virtually see everybody. Hopefully, obviously this is well received today. So, yeah, I think size and scale, Chris, I think it's been really the challenging aspects of it and understanding how the game fits together. I think people thought they knew the game of football, but until you understood the real complexities, like you say, at different levels of the game, whether that be sorry. I think someone just muted me there, Chris.
I promise you it wasn't me, Colin. It wasn't because you're a United fan, I promise.
Okay, we're just giving that away anyway, Chris, to everybody else on the call. Yeah, I think it's the size and scale of football and understanding from the Premier League down all the way down to the National League system. I think football found a voice. It found a community voice. It found an understanding of the challenges we faced. Many of those that first proposed were all around finances. Everything was financially, particularly the key challenge. The FA itself, £300 million, was pretty much wiped off our inventory and our budgets within a very, very short space of time. Those who don't know the Football Association may think that football is obviously very profitable and it fits in there, but the FA is a not-for-profit organisation. The reinvestment of those funds has to go back into the game at all levels, be that the professional game or equally down to the actual steps 5, 6 of the game, which we all know. And in our local vicinity, we'll all have come across those clubs. So the investment was the key, and how we invested the money that we had back into the game. Unfortunately, like probably every organisation, certainly football wasn't immune to cuts in funding, but equally cuts in jobs and resource. So that was the biggest challenge, I think, what many of us faced. I think in grassroots locally, it just impacted so much that you were taking away the game that people loved. It was the actual outlet. It was the ability to get out there, as you say, on an evening, a weekend, watch the game, participate in the game. I think that was the real stretch. And then I think the real challenge was actually seeing then loved ones within the game. And I think that was a real challenge within football. We started to illustrate and understand that actually people who are part of your communities, football might be this big icon, but it's actually about people and it's about those communities. So yeah, it's been a real challenge over the season. We had to end the season in 1920 and we've had to kind of reform the season. Anybody who's a follower of football saw the National League system was completely restructured yesterday. Leagues and teams moving. Local teams like Wythenshawe now will play Macclesfield next year. You wouldn't have seen that a few years ago. That's almost a football league club coming now to play in the local vicinities of GM. So we've got a real challenge on that. So restructuring the game has been the real challenge. For me personally, at Manchester FA, you look at even aspects of our office accommodation, which is now, we were based out of the Etihad campus, which was it's heavily been taken over by the NHS and where the vaccination hub is. So again, probably many of us as well, we've been working like this, and the new normal, whether that new normal will be a very hybrid position. But yeah, there's so much to talk in football. And I think the other thing, Chris, really is just to mention is the other things which have been going on as football's commenced and as it started to move around. Fundamental change in governance. You can see that at the professional game down to the actual grassroots game. EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, strong messages over the last 15 months, not predominantly brought on by COVID, but predominantly brought on by change and things being saved. And in our region, obviously, there's been a really big aspect around safeguarding, especially since the Sheldon report, which was a couple of months ago. So yeah, some really challenging times, majority driven by financial, Chris.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Colin. And I think it's an absolutely fascinating one. I mean, I'm sure we've got a lot of football fans on of all colours and denominations, and certainly, and I wasn't going to mention the Super League words, but I think even during the pandemic, I do feel that football fans of all persuasions and colours and everything are probably more aligned now and more kind of supportive of one another than ever before, simply because of the shared missing of that experience of going to watch football, whether it is your local non-league team down like round the corner, or whether it's that experience of walking to the big stadiums at Old Trafford or the Etihad, or in my case the University of Bolton Stadium, or whatever club we all support, and we've certainly all missed it. And I think it's that community aspect of it I've certainly missed. And on that segue, I want to bring Tracy in now, if I can, Tracy, because I know your role at the Rugby League World Cup is a social impact director and focus very much about the impact on community and how particularly the World Cup is going to be embedded in the local community. And if I can ask you the same question as everyone else, how's your work been impacted over the last 15 months or so? But also, what do you see as the value that sport, and particularly the World Cup, is going to have on coming out of the pandemic, and how we're going to almost kind of like recover from it? What role is sport going to take in that, if I can ask you that, Tracy?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think similar to everybody else, we've been impacted over the last 15 months. We had a lot of plans to deliver some community engagement activities and deliver a range of programmes to local communities and areas that are hosting World Cup games, and a lot of those have now been had to pause, been put on hold, and we're now frantically trying to get everything back up and running as everybody else is as we're starting to unlock, which is fantastic. And I think for us, it's brought a lot of the key things to the forefront. So we run a varied programmes for local communities focused on physical activity, mental health and wellbeing, volunteers. And I think community sport and sport in general has been, like everything else, really badly affected by the pandemic, but I think it also creates a massive opportunity for us as things are starting to open up. Community sports clubs, I think, are the hub in a lot of areas. They're the hub of their local communities. They can be that focal point for people to start coming out of lockdown now, to start interacting with people again, to start building those social connections, to get re-engaged with their local communities, to get physically active again. And I think our community sports clubs are really best place to do that, and across all different types of sports. And we've certainly seen it across lots of rugby league clubs. A lot of the community clubs pulled together during the pandemic. A lot of our rugby league community clubs turned themselves into, delivering food banks. They were, doing all sorts of different things because they couldn't do what they normally do, which is getting people together and being active. And they turned their attentions into trying to do good in their local community and providing support where it was needed. And I think now the focus is back on how the local communities can support those local sports clubs to get back up and running and back doing what they do best, which is providing sport and physical activity to young people and adults, which we all know has far wider reaching benefits than just being physically active. And I think community sports are really key to helping to build the recovery and get the nation back on track again. And the same with major events as well, and and live sporting events. People love going to live sporting events. As we've already heard earlier, people are wanting tickets. Ballots are going well, ticket sales are going well for things that are now starting to reopen. People are itching to get back into stadiums and get back watching live sport. And I think live sport has got that real opportunity to be able to bring people together, give them something to celebrate, something a bit more lighthearted to think about and enjoy, and and get back engaged with and make connections with friends and family again that they've maybe not seen for quite a few months.
Yeah, absolutely, Tracy. And that was a really good point. Actually, we've had a question that's come in that I'm just going to ask everyone to respond to before we push on with some of the questions we want to look at. And if everyone watching, if you do have any questions for the panel or any individual member of the panel, please use the chat function. Please put them in there. More than happy to ask them. We've had a question from Yue. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. Is how have you used technologies to keep fans engaged despite the absence of physical attendance? That's why I wanted to ask this, Tracy, after your comment about physical events. Also, do you think technologies will be used more in the post-COVID-19 era for fans to consume sport? Or there is some fatigue amongst consumers about technologies and hence offline physical experiences will be more valued? Angela, if I could ask you about the cricket side of things, how have you been using technology, and do you think it's something that's going to continue, or do you think we're going to be a bit fatigued with all these Zoom calls and just can't wait to be sitting in a live event and watching some proper cricket?
Yeah, I think in terms of how we've used technology, we've live streamed a lot of our fixtures, so the reach of that, we've been able to go out to members and the cricket fans ultimately.
I have to say, I have been an enjoyer of the streaming of the live cricket when I've not been working.
Good, isn't it?
Working hard when I've been working.
Yeah, the company we use is brilliant. So I think it's a really good live stream that we've got at the club. So that's been out there, and then we've done a lot with our members as well in terms of kind of virtual events to kind of keep them engaged. So with a lot of kind of ex-players and some of the players, current players. So lots of different kind of sort of virtual events to keep them sort of connected with us as a club, because obviously they've not been able to come down to the ground, so we've had to find a way. We've actually resorted as well just to picking up the phone and speaking to members. So a lot of our staff members and again a lot of the players have actually been calling members, because a lot of them are kind of older, traditional, you know, an older age group and potentially quite lonely. So that was something that we instilled straight away. Yeah, and I guess it's just regular communication, isn't it, on the website and email.
Yeah.
You know, our
completely.
AGM has been virtual as well. So that was last year. We're hoping to do that part live, part virtual moving forward as well. I think, yeah, the virtual world is one where it's been great to kind of keep us all connected. You know, we've learned that there's lots of different ways that we can stay connected by Teams, by Zoom, etc., etc. But I think there is a certain amount of fatigue with it, you know, especially even now starting to go back into the office and be around people and have meetings with people. It's quite overwhelming at first because you're using all of your senses to connect, as opposed to, you know, you're just using minimal senses online, and you get quicker decisions, you know, you get better discussion, better conversation. So yeah, I think eventually there'll always be a little bit of kind of both, but I think people are desperate to get back to the live world, without a doubt.
Yeah. No, thanks, Angela. Colin, I'm going to come to you next, because you may have actually been at a live sporting event last night without me having given it away earlier too much. Was it worth it? Was it worth the wait, or would you have been happy just sitting at home, feet up watching it on the telly, or how was it?
There's no alternative really, is there, when you think about the opportunity at a live event. I've had the opportunity many a time to enjoy that. I think it's interesting how the generations see this in terms of, Chris, what people actually want and what they need. You know, I recall talking to my son about this, and he enjoys watching on TV because he can see the close-ups, he can see the action, he can see all the information. And when you're in rugby or cricket, you're trying to work out, certainly when I watch the rugby, you know, an understanding of the rules sometimes for people, then some views are a little bit easier and a bit easy to understand. I think for me, like I say, I love a live event, but equally, I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think there's going to be, you know, I've received my program digitally throughout. I probably enjoyed it digitally. Actually, it's far more easy than understanding and picking one up and leaving it under my seat at Old Trafford, then forgetting about it. Or equally, it's, you know, it's full of beer or whatever has been tipped down the side of my chair. So no, I think there's aspects where a hybrid approach will be. And if I look in football, a decision we made really quickly, and we've accelerated 6 years ahead here, is decide that actually our education tools and our education provisions in terms of volunteers achieving their level 1 in football will be done digitally. That's a big call, because I'm not convinced, and that might sound strange as a CEO saying I've got to stand up here and back it. I'm not convinced if that's going to work for everybody. If you want to do your coaching qualifications, you want to do it face to face. But I know that's a hybrid where you can get you can do some of the work and some of the webinars online. And for the younger people, that's going to work really, really well. And equally then having the opportunity where we can create real proper mentoring tools. So I think what it's done, Chris, it's advanced a hybrid approach. But I still think that the feel, the energy, and it's about the environment, isn't it? I know the game's the game, whatever game you watch, cricket, whatever it is, but it's the experience. You go for the experience. You know, when I go and watch the 2020, I love getting there early, being outside, and it's the communication, it's the social. So there's a lot more to technology, but we've all become more tech savvy, all generations. So, and if you didn't know how to use it, you just ask your son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, and they showed you how to do it. And certainly I've been beneficials of that, just asking my 17 and 14-year-old, I'm stuck, and they go, what are you doing, Dad? It's dead easy, just do this. So I think I don't know how people feel on the call, but I think anybody who's in organisations now will have to create some kind of hybrid approach and how we do that. We've got some issues at the moment on our COVID policy, just to give an example. You know, on our COVID policy, we've got some clubs and leagues who are openly, honestly admitting that their volunteers have not been vaccinated and they don't want to take the vaccine. So I'm going to make a decision as an organisation. Do I want to send my team into an environment which I know is potentially more at risk? So the answer for me is, actually, I'm not telling the club or the league or whatever volunteers, I won't see you. The only option we will offer is the digital use and understanding it in that manner. So, you know, it might be a bit strong to have that feeling, but I've got to protect my team. as much as ensuring that everybody else is actually in a safe place. So I think there will be aspects of technology where it's really clear and mandatory, but the rest of it, I think it will be a real good hybrid approach.
Yeah, no, completely, Colin's a good point. Claire and Tracy, I don't know which of you would like to answer this in terms of the World Cup and how technology is going to be used for the World Cup, and if there's anything that's, do you feel that it's, well, as questions asked, are we a bit tech fatigued? Are we looking forward to actually getting into stadia to watch the World Cup, do you think?
Yeah, well, I can answer on something that we've done in the last sort of 12 months. So in November last year, we were due to do a nations visit. So ahead of any major sporting event, the nations do the team managers do a team visit over into the nations, so they can see, view their hotels, their training venues, see where they're going to be where the team are going to be based, and sort of live in for several weeks during the tournament. And it's a really important part of the build up into what is the pinnacle of the sport and a World Cup event. That was due to take place in November last year. So obviously we were unable to fly 32 teams or 30 representative from 32 teams from around the world into England to carry out that event. So the pandemic forced us to do things differently, and we actually delivered a virtual nations event. So we ended up doing everything that we would have done with the nations when they were here, if they were here in person, trying to do that virtually and doing video run-throughs of all the training venues. So say we've got 32 teams, 32 training venues, 32 hotels, 21 stadiums. We had to do video run-throughs of all of that. We've got a portal so that people could view everything, see that the gym, the fitness gym that they were going to be in, to check what weights are in there, and is it suitable for what they need. And it really it was really a really challenging time for us to think around, actually we've got all these things that we need to deliver, and we would normally do it in person, but we couldn't. But it was really, it went as well as it could do. It seemed to be really successful. I think maybe potentially some learnings for future events is to, do you actually need to fly everybody around the world, or can you do it differently? And we delivered a virtual coin toss, so we have to do a coin toss to decide who's the home and away team. So we delivered all of that virtually as well. Let's say, I think for some of our team it was a really challenging time, and it's kind of fingers crossed and hope the technology works. But it seemed to go well, and I think so it has definitely changed our view on technology, changed our approach to things, and we do now question a lot of the time, do we actually can we do things differently? And I think it's done that for a lot of organisations, and making people just think about things and forcing people to do things in a different way. And I think, as Angela and Colin have said, that it'll lead to that hybrid approach where there is that in-person experience. But I think ultimately for fans, I think in the long run this will be a better experience for fans, because organisations have been forced to think about things differently and ultimately deliver a wider range and a more hybrid approach to customer experience.
Thanks, Tracy. Claire, is there anything you wanted to add to that at all, and from your perspective?
Yeah, I think just on the live sport itself, I think for me, it's about, as Colin said, it's actually not just about the sporting event, but it's everything, the build up to it, the meeting with the friends, the walk to the ground. It's about everything, and it's about how that one event impacts on the community. It's you go to the restaurant, you go to the bar, the hotels are open because you need accommodation, you're using public transport, the staff at the venues are back working. I think it's not just about that one game of football or that one game of rugby or that one game of cricket. It's about how the sport affects the communities and and people's well-being and bringing everybody together. I think that's the bit that people miss about sport. You can put a live game on TV. We've all watched it during lockdown, but it feels different when there's no crowd there. And I don't know about anybody listening or part of this. For me, it's about passion. You can't feel the passion So, you know, people have been following their teams or going to sport since they were, you know, knee high. And now that's been taken away from them. And it almost feels like, yes, I've had to think differently about how they watch it. But by God, I bet they're desperate to get back, because it's everything that goes around it. It's not just about that one day. It's a build up. It's getting your ticket through the post or downloading it. It's everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Claire. And I want to come on to health and wellbeing in a second, actually. Before I do, thanks everyone who's getting involved in the chats. Really appreciate it. Do get involved in the conversations that are taking place there. A few people are having a discussion around technology on the back of some of the comments made. I've seen VAR get mentioned, so I won't go on to that. We're here all day just talking about VAR. But please, if you've got any other questions, please do drop them in there and we can certainly have a look at it. But one big area I wanted to chat with everyone about, and Claire, you've just mentioned it there, so I'm going to come straight back to you on that if I can, is around health and wellbeing. I think the pandemic really has highlighted to all of us the importance of our own health and wellbeing, in particular our mental health. And it's something that I think is something we're going to, well, I really hope that everyone collectively is going to be looking at in far greater detail. So I'd be interested to know a bit more about what you think in terms of your organisations, the events, and the Rugby League World Cup aspect of it. Is what are you doing at the moment to look at improving health and wellbeing through sport, and where do you see sport and particularly your events as being able to help tackle some of the challenges that we're facing around mental health and general health and wellbeing too?
I think what I will do is, I think Tracy's probably more clued to answer that, actually, because she actually works on that. So sorry, Tracy. But so
it's all right, Claire. I'll let you pass the ball to Tracy in a moment. Then that's fine. No problem.
You know, she's been working a lot on that programme and the social impact and mental and health and wellbeing. So sorry, Tracy.
No, that's fine. We actually started looking at mental health and a mental health programme prior to the pandemic. So in January 2020, so 3 months before obviously we went into lockdown, we launched our mental fitness charter. So we became the first major sporting event to have a mental fitness charter. And we had the Duke of Sussex be part of that, and it helped us launch that, which really stated our commitment to promoting positive mental health across the tournament, and that's across our workforce, our volunteers, the competing teams, but also into our communities as well, and the community rugby league players in the areas where the tournament's taking place. So we've brought on board Movember, who I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, who are a global men's health charity, and they are working with us to help us deliver quite a wide range of mental fitness programme. We have been impacted, as I said earlier, over the last 15 months. We were hoping to get underway with delivering the programme last year. We've had a bit of a stop-start run on it, but we're now, you know, delighted this week that we're back underway and out in community clubs delivering workshops. But that work is all around trying to educate people around the signs and symptoms of mental health. So how do they spot when they might be struggling, or when their teammates might be struggling, or other people around them might be struggling, and tips and guidance on how they can support themselves. So how can you look after yourself, and how can you look after your teammates better? And that training is going to be delivered to all 12 to 18-year-old rugby league players. So we've got around 8,000 rugby league players that will receive the training, their families and their coaches as well. And then all our competing teams at tournament time, and all of our workforce, so all of our World Cup teammates and volunteers will receive the training as well. And the training is delivered for us. It was really important. I think how you get the messages across around mental health is really important. And a lot of the research that we've done and that our partners have done shows that actually young people prefer to hear messages from sports stars, that they, people who they look up to. A lot of people are involved in sport, and they value hearing those messages from people who have played sport professionally, and particularly men as well. Men indicated that they prefer to hear health messages from sports professionals as opposed to clinicians and doctors. And I think within our rugby league communities, a lot of our traditional rugby league communities don't seek help from doctors and the NHS when they maybe should. They're people who don't traditionally go and seek out help. So we need to think about different ways of reaching them. So we've recruited a team of, I think we've got around 13 so far, former rugby league players, so former professional and international rugby league players, and we've trained them up or to deliver these workshops. So they're now going out into community clubs, talking to our young people, talking to coaches of these young people, and sharing their stories and their, the challenges they faced, and how they cope with that, and sort of sharing their journey and their tips. And we're finding that that's having a much better impact, and hopefully helping to get the messages across, and helping young people to listen and understand, and start to take action and understand that actually it's okay to talk about mental health, and it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, completely, Tracy. Angela, I'll come to you, if I may, about health, wellbeing and so on, in terms of the Lancashire cricket, what's happening in the cricket side of things.
Yeah, I think as a club we've recognised that it has to be on top of the agenda. I mean, last year, there was a lot of staff that were on furlough. We went through a restructure programme as well towards the back end of the year, which was pretty intense, particularly affected a lot of the operations team. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of change, and as a result of that, I think people are tired as well. They're quite exhausted. Even the people that have worked throughout have had to work in really challenging situations and become more flexible in terms of how they work. And when you're working from home, there's no separation between work and life. It all becomes kind of blurred. So I think everything becomes a lot more intense. So really at the beginning of this year, because a lot of last year was around behind closed doors and restructure and dealing with COVID, I think this year our attention turned to the wellbeing of staff. So we've aligned with a company who basically deliver a lot of wellbeing sessions for us that centre around certain mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression, how to deal with being resilient, because we've all had to learn how to be resilient in this situation. So they're called Wellbeing Wednesdays, and they're delivered on a Wednesday to people who want to participate in that as an additional support. The lady, Lily Jo, who delivers those, is also a trained counsellor as well. So she offers one-to-one sessions with anybody in the club who wants to take that on. We also have a separate counsellor as well through a different company that is there for our staff also. So there's that support. We've also just undergone a mental health first aid training course, and there was actually 25 members of staff that went on that course, and I think that was brilliant. We all kind of came together, all different people within the organisation. So we now have 25 fully qualified first aid mental health trainers on site, which is great. And it was a really interesting process, I think, for everybody to go through. And the popularity of people wanting to go on that just showed and demonstrated, how much people want to learn more about it and be supported with it as well. And then we've also, we're talking about sports, so we've also kind of instigated a lot of virtual classes, which will hopefully translate to real life classes in the future, which have been around Pilates, yoga, circuit training, because we recognise again that sport is a great way for everybody to kind of de-stress, declutter, look after themselves. So that's something that we've been promoting as well to all of our staff. So yeah, it's definitely top of the agenda. I think there's still a lot of work to do on it, because I think for the next couple of years, we're going to have to address this issue and think more about it, talk more about it. I think it's becoming much more prevalent, in life, to kind of just be open about this. And the more people that you talk about it, the more people have gone through some kind of mental health issue. So completely, I completely agree with you that Angela. I think certainly one of the things I've seen in the past 12 months has been a far more open conversation about mental health and how people are feeling. It's far more acceptable to say I'm not doing okay today than I think it's ever been before, and I'm pleased we're getting there. But like you said, there's a lot more to do and a long way to go. Colin, if I can bring you in now. I know when we spoke yesterday, I know you'd been on a call with a few people, a couple of important people in Greater Manchester, talking about health and well-being. And I just wondered if you wanted to kind of just talk a little bit from your perspective and conversations that are taking place in Greater Manchester
around the importance of what we need to do next around health and well-being.
Yeah, Chris, I think it's pretty obvious, I think, to most people now, and this is exactly the conversation which takes place in GM at the moment, that whenever we get this pandemic under the position it should be and in some form of control, the next pandemic is just upon us, which is going to be around health and well-being. In particular, there's very vulnerable groups out there which are going to be more of a concern that we need to support. So yeah, that's something certainly Andy Burnham I've spoke to, and he's referenced that very specifically. The next pandemic is this health and well-being piece, and in GM we need to pull together. We need to be really clear on what that strategy is going to be and how we're going to support people. I think Angela picked a really great point. Actually, you're going to have to look at home first and look at internally what you've got, your team coming back and what they've done. We've also done the mental first aid, and everyone's been a big advocate. A lot of people really opening up far more than ever been, which is pleasing to see. And it's easy to say everything's okay when it's not. I think it's understanding what those challenges and that influences are on that health and on that piece. Some of them might not actually be physical. And I think that's the piece what we're trying to piece together and support and see how football plays its part. We know football's a big part of health and well-being. That was the biggest challenge and the biggest piece we were putting together back to the MPs, and certainly the directors of public health, that football needed to come back in community because it was a real big part of supporting people's mental health and well-being and being out there to play. So look after internally, and then the externally, the clubs, leagues, volunteers. From our side is the remit we're looking at the moment. How do we support them? We know some young players are going to be coming back with families that they've lost. We know that there's volunteers who are not that comfortable in coming back to the game at this present time. And this isn't because of physical ability. It's a lot of it is just a little bit a bit concerned about where that fits. So there is a big piece of work to do here, Chris, and it's not just down to any individual sport, but sport for me, I think, can play a significant part, whether that be a sport which providing volunteer participation, or whether that's a sport which actually provides that energy, that enjoyment, and that get out from whatever's going on in your life. So I hopefully everybody who's joined this call today really appreciate that. It has accelerated, hasn't it, for everybody in the whole world to talk about mental health and well-being. It really, really is important. I think we all go through it. So it is a big conversation in Greater Manchester, and probably some of the people on the call are included on those at the moment. And I know that the Mayor of Manchester, with his re-election, will be really clear about how he supports that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. We've had quite a few questions coming in. We're really running out of time now. Sadly, we've only got about 5 minutes left to bring everything together. So I'm sorry for everyone who's asked a question. I've not been able to bring it in, but I need to kind of wind up now. I wanted to make sure we finish on a real positive note and thinking about the future, what we're looking at next, what are the big opportunities that are coming. I mean, we've got a big hurdle that we need to pass on the 21st of June, and depending on which newspaper you read, it's either looking quite positive or it's looking quite negative as to whether or not the 21st of June is going to be a day of celebration of reduced restrictions or an extended amount of lockdown or whatever we're going to be having. I'm keeping everything crossed that it's obviously that we're going to be hopefully celebrating, being a bit more freer to do stuff and hug, and certainly family members, etc. But in terms of now where we're at now, and certainly looking forward, in terms of how confident we're feeling and how we're looking at the next few months and the rest of this year and so on, I just wanted to touch base with everyone, really just give you the last couple of minutes, each of you, just to talk about what is it you're feeling confident about? What is it you're looking forward to most about your sport, your events, your activities, etc., etc. So if I'm going to start off, I'm going to start with Claire. What are you most looking forward to, and what are you most confident about in the next few months, years, so on? Obviously, you can make it about the Rugby League World Cup. I hope you do. But if there's something else, please feel free.
I think I'm most looking forward to out with sport is just seeing my extended family, to be honest. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But I work in Manchester, and the thing that I've noticed more, I mean, before the 17th of May, it was a very eerie place to be I'd never experienced anything like that, from such a vibrant city with lots of bars and music and happiness. It was just the most eerie place to be. So there is definitely a more positive, it's more positive out there, and people have got an increased appetite to come out and start enjoying it. Yes, there's some nervousness, of course there is. You know, we've all been sort of, for want of a better word, locked away for such a long time. But it's great to see the hospitality opening. It's great to see office staff returning, and that vibrant atmosphere and just that togetherness, which I think, for me, I don't look to the 21st of June. I take each day as it comes, because you don't actually know what's around the corner, and we all look forward to these milestones. But what this has taught me is every day is a milestone in your life, and just, you have to enjoy it, and you have to really embrace it. And we've all got an opportunity here to make life better. This has taught us that it can be snatched away in such, you know, in seconds. So just, you know, support each other, be there for each other, help each other, come together and just start enjoying it. And that would be my message to everybody, really.
Fab, Claire, thank you. Angela, I'm going to come to you. What are you most looking forward to in the next few months?
I think Claire said it all, didn't she?
I should have come to you last, Claire. Really sorry. You could have wound it up perfectly then. So sorry, no pressure, Angela. Try and top that.
Oh, I can't. No, I'm just really excited. I mean, we had fans back for the first time this week. So on Monday, oh, it was horrendous weather on Monday, but we had a second team game on Monday. So that's cut across a few days. And, you know, albeit it was only, you know, 200 fans or whatever coming through, it's just been so nice, particularly for our members, to just get back into the ground and have a chat to us and, you know, experience a little bit of kind of live sport being played, and being able to watch it in the ground. So that's been lovely. And we've got the Roses County Championship game next week. I mean, yeah, we're just really looking forward to having fans back. I mean, I've sat in that ground when cricket was being played behind closed doors, and it is just horrendous. You know, it is just so sad. And you just want to see that vibrancy of everybody coming together again and connecting and just enjoying live sport. So, you know, for us, I think, like Claire said, we do not know what's around the corner. You know, something could happen. I'm really hoping that everything does open up on the 21st of June, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, we all collaborate together, and, you know, we work together to kind of work out day by day, you know, what's happening with the world. You know, we've done it for the last year, we can do it again. So but yeah, I'm looking forward to the world opening up and people coming back together again in the office, which is lovely.
Thanks, Angela. Colin, I'm going to come to you next. What are you most looking forward to? If you give us your view in the next just a couple of minutes, please.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of opportunities. I think just picking on Claire's point about actually being a bit, you know, well, everyone, you know, looking after each other is really, really key. If I had to look at utopia, and I'm talking Manchester based here and football based, I'd love to see 2 European competitions back in the city of Manchester. I know some Blues might argue that the Reds are not in Manchester, but I think if we can take the greater Manchester feeling, comes back to that point what Claire said. Imagine a joint bus parade with 2 European trophies coming through the city. Clearly, it'd have to be managed, and GMP might not be too pleased about that, but I think the opportunities are unreal. And I think if you kind of navigate that feeling about being together, why not? So I think that's one which I've proposed it to both clubs at the moment. I've not had a response yet on that one, but we'll see how that goes. Other thing to me, we've got the Euros coming up. So 21st of June, pretty much I think the next day, 22nd of June, England play Czech Republic. So I'd imagine the pubs, the clubs, everywhere is going to be a real hive of activity. And I hope, you know, Gareth and the young team we've got can probably invigorate where we felt and what we felt when we had the World Cup. And that will just start the things off for the Rugby League World Cup. And then we follow into next year, Chris. Tickets have gone on sale just this morning. They're absolutely flying already. I've just seen for the Women's Euros, Manchester's a host city. So that's just literally gone live in the last, while we've been online. Our Manchester Perspective's been pushing that information out about ticket availability for the Women's Euro. So I think it's going to be a summer, hopefully, of passion, pride, and hopefully some success. I've tried to have a conversation with your chair of Rugby League World Cup as well, Chris Brindley, to see if we could, if we can get to the point where New Zealand and Australia don't attend, we've got a good chance of winning the Rugby League World Cup. But I don't think that's in your sales prerogative. I think you need them two nations in there. So hopefully it's a lot of pride, Chris, for everyone, and we get some winners, because I think that'll boost the country and the morale of everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Colin. Go on then, Tracy. I'm coming to you to finish off. No pressure, but are we going to win the Rugby League World Cup?
Well, we're completely neutral.
I'll let you be neutral.
But yeah, obviously, for me, it's just looking forward to hosting the tournament at the end of the year. I think, as everyone said, it's been a really tough 15 months, and great that sport's opening back up. As Colin said, we've got lots to look forward to over the summer, and hopefully we can finish off the year with a fantastic Rugby League World Cup tournament. Looking forward to welcoming the teams and the fans to the tournament, to see some live sport, and just having that, I think, as Colin said, that passion, that pride, that the vibrancy that goes around stadiums when there's live sporting events on, particularly around international tournaments. There's that real togetherness, and hopefully people being able to celebrate and mark the end of a really tough couple of years. And seeing who wait and see which nations lift the trophies. We've got 2 of the trophies that will be lifted at Old Trafford in November, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people on this call with fingers crossed for certain nations to be lifting those trophies.
Absolutely, Tracy. None of us are biased whatsoever. Completely neutral in every way. I'm just delighted Bolton got promoted, but I'll drop that in the end. So on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much, the 4 of you, for joining. Honestly, I think we could talk for at least another hour, if not longer. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and comments. Everyone having a chat online about some things being suggested. Sorry, I've not been able to ask all your questions, but I'm sure if you do want to, if you have any specific questions you wanted to ask any of the panel, please get through to Pro Manchester, and I'm sure they'll forward them on. If not, pass on contact details. Once again, thank you so much for this. Thank you, Pro Manchester, for organising and pulling all this together. And if you are interested in anything, or any of the programmes Pro Manchester are doing, or anything that we've mentioned today, please do get in touch. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.